One of the big things you run into is about motivation, right, in terms of buyers or sellers in the process. And so one of the things we struggle with in selling a large ticket product with a long sales cycle is people's motivation. And so one of the things I want you guys to start layering in are these power phrases that get people to make moves, right? It's a way you calculate to their subconscious mind.
Hey, this is Blake Sloan. I've been selling real estate over 14 years. Our team of highly trained professionals, along with our unmatched marketing, has sold thousands of homes here in the Myrtle Beach area, and this is how we do it.
But I'm going to talk about some what do call them, magic phrases or power phrases in terms of what to do and what to look at. But we talked about this the other day from that book about what to say. But I'll talk about a few different things. So it's the way you do things. But one of the words that get thrown around a lot is motivation. But a lot of people don't understand how to get people to actually move and do things. And so the word motivation breaks down into two different things. The word motive, right, which is a Latin word for motivus, which is a translation of motive. The other word is basically a word for reason, or the Asian part, which derives from the word action. And so what am I doing there with motivation? Trying to get people to take action, okay? And so part of how to do that, right, is you want to make sure you're able to understand, how do I take this meaning of motivation and create a true base for understanding all areas of negotiation, influence, persuasion. And so one of the things you do is talk about these power phrases and what they do, right? So one word I want you guys to take down and understand is, write this and use this, how would you feel if? How would you feel if? And there's two ways to use this. There's both a positive and a negative. And I want you to use this in your tool belt or whatever you call it, your quiver, right? To understand, like, how do I take this and write this down and use this and have that piece be able to make that action. Here's the thing, right? When people base their decisions on either emotion or logic, right, a lot of times it tends to be both. And so they have this emotion piece first, but here's the deal, right? The real world tells us people work far harder to avoid potential loss than they do to achieve potential gain. What does that mean? They work harder to avoid loss than they will to get potential gain, right? People avoid pain more so than they pursue pleasure. That's why people do just enough, right? They can work a lot harder and get a lot more pleasure if they don't do it. They do just enough to do what? Avoid pain. And so it's important for us to understand that and use that frame. We're talking to people. So there's two different ways to look at this. How would you feel if, and I want to tie this to whatever what? Their pain is or their pleasure is. So what's some examples we can use that with in terms of our buyers and stuff that we have now, or sellers? I have to plant the seed of the emotion, right? I have to plant the seed of the emotion in their subconscious mind for it to be able to come real. So let me ask you guys this. How would you feel if this becomes your forever home and you're able to raise your children here and create lasting memories every single holiday season, right? Whatever it is. You got to do what? I need them to visualize this, and I'll talk about this in a second. Also, what can else I do? What's the bigger movement here?
How would you feel if you lost out on this?
Yes, pain. How would you guys feel if, it is, they like it, they're not sure if they want to make an offer, and so what I need to do is future pace them and bring in the future pain to the now to help them make the decision. And so I'm going to use this phrase, how would you feel if, I need you to have here fear of loss. How do I use fear of loss in that scenario? And it's going to be, how do you guys feel if you miss out on this property, someone else comes make an offer, and you guys don't get this property? How are you going to feel in that scenario? And I can't be afraid to ask that question. A lot of people are afraid to ask that question because it's a little bit uncomfortable. And I want to talk about that in terms of that. Some of the examples they've used in the book, how would you feel if this decision led to your promotion, which is a positive, right? How would you feel if your competition passed you by? How would you feel if you turned this down? How would you feel if you lost everything? But here, how would you feel if you missed out on this and get priced out of the market? How would you feel if you guys hesitate and don't make a purchase this spring and you end up having to come back in the fall and price your $20,000 more? I'm laying out the scenario and I'm future pacing them on what's going to happen from the pain standpoint. What does future pace mean, you think? I bring future into the present. The best salespeople are very good at that. I bring future into present. So I'm looking at, hey, what's the scenario? And I'm watching what the patterns are. Some people have been on our site for 2 and 3 years, and they want to make a move. They haven't make a move, but they make the regret. And part of that's because we haven't been able to future pace them into how would it feel, right? How would it feel if you guys hesitate, don't make the move, and don't make the purchase this spring, and end up having to come in next spring and pay $30,000, $40,000 more with much higher interest rates? Right? How would you guys feel if you get priced out of the market and actually can't buy your second home here? How would you guys feel if you get stuck in Ohio and actually are never able to own down here and pass that down to your grandchildren? Right? I want to make sure I can find a scenario that puts them both into the pain of now or the fear of loss, and I also want to take the scenarios and have that my pleasure. So I want to get to where I practice and I use these consistently, both in my presentation, at the property, and in my negotiations pieces too, right? You ever get where you're making a negotiation and all of a sudden people don't want to make a good counter? Right? This is a great time to use it. How do you guys feel if you miss out on this property, everything else you look at, you compare it to this one, and then you're disappointed because nothing ever stacks up to this one? Let them answer and say, look, is it worth paying a little bit more and getting this thing done? Right? Watch people have it all the time. They negotiate back and forth, nickel and dime, 2,000 and 3,000, then all of a sudden 2 counters later, what happens? They get to multiple offers and all of a sudden drives the price up or you miss out. Right? How would you feel if we miss out on this property, getting the multiple offers because we're going back and forth nickel and dime over $2,000? Right? These are scenarios that whatever you have happening, whatever you need them to do, use this to bring in the word we talked about, which is what? Motivation. How do I get them to move and take action using this, which is super important for me to understand? Right? That's something that's very, very important for us to use is kind of these magic words, magic phrases. And it's going to go along together with the next one that I want you guys to have and use significantly, which is this. Just imagine. This is super powerful. Why do you think that is? Right? When you said, hey, look, here's what it's like playing golf in the backyard with your kid or grandkid, right? But it talks about, here's what's crazy about it. Did you know every decision any human makes is made at least twice? Decisions made first in your mind hypothetically before it's ever made in reality. What does that mean, you think? They visualize it. And so this key word here, just imagine, forces them to visualize the situation at hand. And so my job as a salesperson to get them to take action to do what? I must paint the picture, but that phrase or that keyword, just imagine, is what allows me to be able to move in here and have them start to look at it. It breaks it down pretty accurate, right? It says, obviously, in fact, for a decision to come true, you must have first at least imagine yourself doing it. Have you ever been in a situation where you said, or even mouthed the words to somebody else, I couldn't see myself doing that? Right? A lot of times people are visualizing themselves, hey, look, I can't do that. And so my job is to do what? Get them to visualize that. And it talks about it's a little thing. If you can't see yourself doing something, the chance of you doing it are slim to none. People make decisions based on the images they see in their minds. So if you can place pictures into people's minds, you can use the results of those images to influence their decisions. Very powerful piece here. I'll say it again, right? People make decisions based on the images they see in their minds. So if you can place pictures in the people's minds, then you can use the result of those images to influence their decisions. So what this does, this is my frame or phrase to help do what? Insert, right, the picture overall. It's the phrase I use to open up the door or open up the window. I'm taking their mind and I'm having them open up the browser window. In the browser window, I'm having them pull up the URL to visualize that web page. Okay, and so I want to get them use this consistently. And these are things that have to be used as a tool that are used in your mind very, very proactively, but you got to use them consciously. Meaning that I see the right opportunity at the right time, and then what do I got to do? Layer in the motion, right? Layer in the emotion for them, which is super important. And it just talks about creating pictures in the mind of others is done by telling stories. I think I taught them that a few weeks ago, right? It just talks about, here's a great example. Remember as children, many good stories started with what? Once upon a time. Then what would happen? Your mind will start visualizing the story, right? We are trained since we are at birth to start visualizing these things with our subconscious mind, and immediately you hear that once upon a time, it triggers those magic words when you just went back and your subconscious brain flips a switch and opens up what they call the image viewer. And so for me, in this scenario, I'm going to have to use this phrase, which is just imagine, and when I have them talk about, I'm going to insert what? The pleasure of the scenario. And I need you guys to understand the importance of this. What you're doing in the property in different places, you're forcing them to look at that and understand. Okay, if I'm on the listing side, I'm imagining them they're going to get them to their next destination, right? Imagine to get you back over to Arizona. Whatever it is the person's want to do, I need to make sure I paint that picture. And the second piece to do this, to anchor this in, is put a time period on this. Okay? Just imagine in 6 months, when? Why? Makes it more real when I attach a time period to this with my people. All right? You just lead into that. Hey, just imagine what it's going to be like in 6 months when you guys are owners here, building equity. You've already built $20,000, $30,000 in equity, and you can bring your grandchildren down here to see what it's like at the beach, at the ocean. Right? Just imagine what it's going to be like when you come down next year knowing you made the right decision and you built $30,000, $40,000 in equity and you have a place you can deed to your children and grandchildren, whatever it is. But what we do is we tend to be order takers too much and not do what? Plant these emotional seeds to get people to make movement a lot easier and a lot faster in terms of what we do. The absolute best salespeople use these words to tap into people's subconscious to help them make decisions that need to be made. Does that make sense? Other people, just imagine what blank will say or think. Just imagine what your wife's going to think when she knows that you made the right decision today to take advantage of this program. We talked about this a lot. So we talked about this on Thursday last week. What happens when the other spouse is not there? You can frame that up and, hey, do they trust you? Right? I'm going to have you consider, and then I can add this and anchor this in and say what? Just imagine what your husband will say when he understands you made the right decision and locked in a program that's going to get you guys the absolute best deal and save you $20,000, $30,000 in your purchase. What am I doing there? I'm taking them from one side of the pendulum to the other, from emotions, from a fear base to what? To a positive base, or like a prosperity based decision there, and it moves them. And so I got to understand what those pieces are like, right? Here's another really good one too I had written down. Just imagine the look on your kid's face. You want to talk about powerful there? When I'm going to probably your blank face. When you want to talk about a powerful movement, right? Nothing moves somebody more powerful than their kids. I thought I knew what it was like to have a kid, and nothing else in the world matters except your kid, right? And so one thing you want to talk about is how do I make sure I can solidify memories, solidify some solid ground for them to be able to have things in the future, right? But everything looks different. And so one of the things you want to talk about is just imagine look on your kid's face when you bring them down to their own condo that you guys own and are actually yours, right? Just imagine look on your kid's face, you take them down to that pool area down there at the ocean, allow them to get on that water slides, right? I need it to be something physical they can actually visualize, and that's going to move them and do what? What does that do there? What type of emotion, though? What I'm looking for. What do you think that positive type visualization does? That positive emotion here eliminates fear. So now all of a sudden me taking that risk of seeing the look on my kid's face is worth the overall issue of me not taking the action or me being fearful of fear of loss. Does that make sense? And so it's very, very powerful for us to understand in that scenario. Last piece here. Just imagine the impact that blank. What's a good one for that? Kyle, what's a good one for that? Just imagine the impact that blank. The story of, hey, here's how you change, the trajectory of your entire family lineage by owning your house here and building equity, right? Just imagine the impact that this purchase is going to have on the future of your children and your grandchildren, to have something that builds equity every single day and that you can pass and deed down onto them and that they can build equity with as well. Right? And you go and talk about, hey, did you know that the average homeowner is worth what? 43 times the average net worth of a renter. Very important to understand there. But you talk about these emotional things, right? So we talk about, just imagine, in 6 months, blank, right? 6 months what? Just imagine what? Yep, blank will say your spouse, your husband, your wife, your friends, your coworkers, your buddies, whatever it is in that scenario, right? Same thing. Let's say it's an NYPD cop. NYPD cops purchasing, what can you talk about? Just imagine what your other police buddies back home are going to say when they see you got this investment or building massive equity and you can rent that out to them, right? Whatever it is. Why? Because people purchase for what? Status. And so how do I link this up to status based on what it is? Okay? Very, very important piece there to understand in that scenario, right? Just imagine the look on blank's face when. Just imagine the look on your kid's face. Just imagine the look on your wife's face when you bring her down here and you guys have your own vacation place that you own on the ocean. Just imagine the look on your wife's face when she wakes up and sees that sunrise from you every single morning. Whatever it is, you guys got to get better. We all got to get better at doing what? Tying the emotion together to the purchase, and we use these magic words and magic phrases to help get them to that place. Does that make sense for you guys? Very, very important, right? It says allowing the power attached to the other person's creative mind to build your case for you will always save you guessing and create a more vivid reality than anything else you could possibly describe. And so my job here, my goal here is to do what? Create a very vivid reality. Now, I use that by having these opening words here, opening phrases. And so I want you to write these down because here's the deal. If you don't come back, if you don't practice these, you're not going to remember them in the moment. And so I need you to be good enough with enough repetitions in your head that I can come back and use these. This is called the 2 types of people one. This is a really good one that is just powerful that we can use all the time. How do you think we could use this? And here's why it's important for us to do this. It talks about, as entrepreneurs or sales professionals or business owners, we're often tasked with the responsibility of helping people make up their minds. Right? To me, the primary job description of all sales professionals is to be decision catalysts in the lives of their customers and prospects, yet still the job can be more simplified as a professional mind maker-upper. Right? And so part of what my job is to do is to close them on this part, knowing what the outcome I want is. And so I can use that in a way with them. Right? And here's the deal, you can also have somebody who's negative in the front. I'll give you a negative one too. There's 2 types of people in this world. Those who judge something before they've even tried it, and those who are prepared to try something new and base their opinion on their own experience, right? Whatever it is. However you want to word that up to. Another one. John and Mary, there's 2 types of people in this world. Those that resist change in favor of nostalgia, and those who make moves with the times and create a better future. So this is coming down to somebody, my husband and wife's not here. Mary, there's 2 types of people. All right? Those that sit back and can't make decisions on their own, and those that sit up and make their own decisions based on their own knowledge because they know that they're qualified. Which one are you?